And then they decided to go with the better plan, which was to catch live foxes in China and Australia, spray paint them with glow paint, and release them throughout Japanese.
No, stop. You can't be serious. That was the plan we decided on otherwise? Instead of...
No, like, if anybody is wondering why we had a late start to the Manhattan Project, it's because we were trying other ways first.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Chaotic Underground. I'm Ryan Damask. I'm here with my good friends Zach Diggity and Steven Bonsai Bandit.
Yo, yo, yo.
Hey!
So, this episode that we're going to do today is actually over a month in the making. We plan to release this shortly after Oppenheimer came out. We're going to be in the vein of that World War II. I'm actually going to be doing kind of a 3-part episode on some of the craziness that happened centered around Manhattan Project, but not directly the Manhattan Project. Felt you probably got enough of that from that 3-hour movie we all sat through.
Yeah. So we got our first trilogy coming on Chaotic Underground. I love it.
So it's going to be fun. We're going to have a great time. You might learn a thing or two. Who knows? It probably won't be anything you'll use in your day-to-day life, but it's good knowledge. So
I will use it, Ryan. Thank you very much.
That's right, folks. The History Channel is no longer the way it was anymore, so we had to fill the World War II gap. 100%.
That's right.
The History Channel couldn't be found, so you got us. Deal with it.
So we're going to start the story today a good ways before World War II, actually, and we're going to focus on a man who would come to be known as Wild Bill Donovan. And he absolutely deserves this name by the end of this. He was born in Buffalo. He went to Columbia University. He excelled. He went on to Columbia Law School. And then he ended up serving in World War I, and he became a commander he became a colonel. God,
he became a clerk. Is that what you're about to say?
It's okay.
While, man.
World War I just makes up its positions. They're like, hey, you survived the mustard gas? You're a commander.
You're a colon.
You're a clerk commander.
So he ended up in World War I, where he served as a colonel in the U.S. Army. He kind of distinguished himself above others as a brave and resourceful, but pretty fucking hard-headed officer who got missions done. We're talking this guy should have been court-martialed 10 times over, except the stuff he did was successful.
Would you say that he's like, as Palin put it, a maverick? That he's a maverick of an individual?
Yeah, exactly.
Just cut that state off the fucking country. God damn it.
He had multiple times throughout World War I where the battle did not look like it was going his way, and he just got pools of blood around him and soldiers lying on the ground, and he's like, yeah, I think we got this, and he would go for it, and they would somehow pull it off, and so he'd get a pat on the back, and they'd be like, yeah, way to go. And the most famous
I feel
one,
like he was just really good at lining people up in front of him.
Yeah.
Go, guys. Oh, that's awful. What happened to them? But we're successful.
Give me 5 more.
So near the end of the war, he was traipsing around the countryside of France, and ended up an explosive went off, and he caught some shrapnel in the leg. And then they get gassed, and he's nearly blinded by some toxic gas. And he was like, no, we're gonna keep going. This dude could barely walk or see. By the way, to note, he obviously he refused to follow orders most of the time. And one of those orders is you take off your medals, obviously, when you're in battle, because
look at all the shit I've done.
but he wore his medals out everywhere, and they were the snipers can see the light reflecting off those, and he is quoted saying, "They can't hit me, and they won't hit you," to his men.
Wait, but why though? Like, if I was a private in his regiment, I'd be like, explain, please.
I just feel like people like this existed, and what it was is it's less like courageous behavior, ingenuity, and it's the people who found out drugs before everybody else. Like he figured out what he could snort to just be like, fuck it, I'm gonna say a thing, and we're gonna go do stuff, and what
Steven's trying to get at here is God bless our pioneer cocaine snorters.
I mean,
which is like everyone in World War I and World War II.
Yes,
they're doing God's work. They were doing God's work.
It's just a ton of cocaine until they get shot, and then it's just a ton of morphine. Rinse and repeat.
That's right. It's not an opioid epidemic. We've been doing this since the fucking 20s.
Oh yeah, I mean the Nazis were all methed out, so it was just like. Ugh.
Oh well, that's a whole other animal with all the experiments they did.
So shortly after saying they can't hit me and they won't hit you, he gets shot in the knee, and they're like, okay, Wild Bill. I don't think they call him that yet, but they were like
Wild William.
They were like, we got these orders that said like, if you catch shrapnel and you're shot in the knee and we get gassed and half your men are dead, we probably should evacuate. And he was like, I don't believe in orders. And so like he ordered them to like charge forward, and he somehow like managed to get up on one foot and charge with them, and they won that battle. And it was an extremely
because he was probably like, yeah, if I don't get this done, I either die or get court-martialed. Like, what the fuck? So he was motivated. He basically told all his men, well, if you don't do this right, then, well, you fucked either way. So
I love the image in my mind of him just hopping on one foot with a gun, just being like, fuck it, let's go.
God.
And the better part is I have this image in my head to go along with it. Before he was Wild Bill, he was Silly Willy. To the command staff. Absolutely. Is it Silly Willy again? Is he out there hopping around convincing people they're not going to get shot?
God, what if he was Silly Willy all along, and he specifically just like in every interview, yeah, they called me Wild Bill Hickok, and then the interview's like, what'd they really call you?
It turns out no regard for human life, Bill Donovan, was too long to fit on the name tag, so they just went with Wild.
No, sorry.
Would you say that he was like a sociopath in a way? Like
no, he really was, and he was actually a very well liked guy. He's a big macho guy, very charismatic. Like people really looked up to him. He inspired morale. Yeah.
These guys still exist to this day. There's always times like this. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he was the Logan Chitwood of the army back then. If you don't know
who that is,
I was gonna say I don't know either.
He's he's a bodybuilder that
he's like I don't know who he is either.
No, I follow him on. I follow him on TikTok. Let me finish. God damn it. No, he's a bodybuilder. He's really into anime. What's that anime called, Steven? Yojiro Hanma or whatever it's called, or if it's about fighting and martial arts. He does a lot of cosplay from it.
Are you just
anime about martial arts?
Yeah, is this just like your reference didn't land, so you're trying to like throw this on me?
I like his content. That's all you need to know.
By the way, it's Baki.
Baki, thank you. For the love of fucking God, why didn't you just say that? You knew from the damn start.
I just really wanted your reference to fucking fall flat on his face.
Oh like God. Oh God, that's yes and if I've ever seen it. God.
All right.
Good shit.
So
anyway,
despite all these crazy antics of Wild Bill in World War I, when he came back home after our victory, he was the recipient of, everything: a Medal of Honor, Distinguished Service Cross, Distinguished Service Medal, Silver Star, Purple Heart, and
handcuffs,
so many more.
Court-martial, subpoena.
So throughout all these battles, and this in World War I wasn't like his only stage. But before that, he was down like fighting on the Mexican border against Pancho Villa. Like he led that whole assault, and then he has all these. But every time this dude goes into battle, there is something that seems the same, and it's that there's just a slurry of dead bodies all around him from both his side and the other. And so, being a smart man, like I said, he excelled in school. Like, he realized that there was a need for intelligence before just traipsing off into battle, right? And just people just massacring each other. And that became a really big deal for him. So after the war, he became a district attorney for New York. And this was right around the time of
Wild Bill, attorney at law. Dun dun dun. Pew pew. I'm a maverick lawyer, everybody. I don't follow the rules. Fuck the law.
That's my thing. I immediately was like, this seems like a weird transition. You know, it's not like it went from like, because the rest of it makes sense. It's a warrior fighting Pancho Villa, World War I. You said he was in World War II as well, correct?
Yeah, we're getting there.
Okay, we'll get there. Anyways, the point is like
I said it was a World War II
warrior. Like, most people who become district attorneys start in law and things like that, and he went from war to.
Well, you got to think about this.
Was he a lawyer beforehand?
Yeah. He graduated from Columbia Law School.
Shit.
And then we had World War I, the Great War. So yeah, just about everybody and their brother was going off to war.
Yeah, this makes a little bit of sense with the intelligence thing, because trench warfare was bullshit in all reality. Mm-hmm. It really was not effective. Yeah. Like, intelligence would have truly helped fight a better war.
Yeah. Well, it was that whole like, you know, back in medieval times, like, we'll just take tens of thousands of soldiers with swords and just run them at each other and see which one has men standing at the end. And it was like, you fast forward to like the early 1900s and they're like, we'll keep doing that, but with guns and bombs.
But this way, because of the lack of accuracy with the gun, let's just have them all stand in straight lines, and let's take turns and
pin medals to them.
And pin medals to them that shine. Running each other with swords was the only way to really. That's the pure form of warfare.
That's the pure form of warfare, not this drone BS.
Yeah, you know.
So he became district attorney for New York, and this led into the time of Prohibition. And if you've watched anything like Boardwalk Empire or Peaky Blinders or anything like that, you know, during the time of Prohibition, like, every political official was corrupt, right? Like, they were all raking in money off booth. But Wild Bill was actually stuck to his guns and like enforced the law, and to like the dismay of many rich people, right? Like, he pissed off a lot of people breaking into like these fancy establishments.
There's that maverick there. There he is.
But since he kind of established this no corruption persona about him, he was put into a very high position within the Department of Justice. And because they were rooting out everybody from politics that was even a sniff of corrupt. And so that put him in a very high position to start like seeing the things that were going on in other parts of the world, like Europe and the budding rise of Nazi Germany.
Nazis.
So he's tapped and asked to go to Europe and just gather some intelligence. He goes into fascist Italy and Germany and Great Britain and just is trying to gather everything he can about the situation in Europe. And he ends up befriending like tons of diplomats and spies and everything else, and learning like just how amazing at the time the intelligence was of some of the countries over there, especially Great Britain.
And we were just getting started.
Not even that, but I mean, we didn't have any kind of intelligence. I mean, like, the Army had their own intelligence and the Navy had their own intelligence and stuff like that, but there was no centralized intelligence. So it was very spread out and not uniform. So
I have a question, essentially, and I don't know if you have the answer necessarily. So he goes and becomes a district attorney, but then he's tapped for this, what is essentially an intelligence position. Was there a person that decided, like, we need to grab people who might be suitable for this job? Or was he assigned to do something else and he just happened to do intelligence work?
Like a Nick. Was there like a Nick Fury, who would be like, I got the OSS initiative,
Not necessarily, but he wasn't a district attorney anymore. He was now working for the Justice Department.
That's right. He did mention that. I apologize.
So he had gotten pretty far out. But you're right. This was more like a Department of State type of mission. But we didn't really have anything like this, right? We knew that he was a very charismatic, well-liked person who was very intelligent and was good at this kind of thing. He had started, he had kind of proven himself as an intelligence gatherer during Prohibition domestically. And so you're right. I don't know the exact specifics about why he was tapped for this. I do know that when he went to Columbia, he was a classmate and friend of one Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Mr. FDR himself.
The plot thickens.
Yep. And so when he got back from Europe, he actually started advising for FDR and told him that, like, dude, like, you should see the intelligence over there. We're not very intelligent, and we need what they have.
Like he showed up with the secret handshake, like, "What's up, FDR? I'm just letting you know, we're dumb. Nothing on these motherfuckers."
Yeah, and America was not about that, right? Like FDR's Secretary of War, Henry Stimson, is quoted saying, "Gentlemen don't read each other's mail." I think we talked about this before, but the U.S. was at a total disadvantage compared to like Great Britain and Germany and Russia, who had intelligence bureaus of somewhat for like not like a decade, but like centuries, right? And they spied on allies and adversaries. They knew what was going on everywhere, and we had nothing like that.
Yeah. Then shows up, and then us show up. We've been a country for what, like maybe 160 years, or something like that. And
yeah, so he convinced FDR that this needed to happen, despite so many people in the government saying, we don't need that. All of our military branches, when FDR agreed to this, were pissed, right? They're like, well, we already have our own intelligence. We don't want somebody like over us gathering intelligence, right?
That's such an American response too. Like, we don't need no help.
It's a fairly human response, to be honest. But,
okay, yeah, sure, man.
But anyway, FDR was like, okay, well, stop number one. We're sending you back to Britain, and you're going to meet my good friend Churchill, and he's going to get you up to speed on this whole spy thing and this whole intelligence thing.
Gets there, and he's like, it's turtles all the way down.
Yeah, I talked to Churchill. The guy couldn't understand a fucking thing he was saying. He was sloshed. There's
my second scotch.
There's my second.
So he gets there. They get along super well.
Imagine that.
And he introduces, he starts showing him like spy documents and like operations from like MI6 or there was another department as well. I can't remember what it's called, but he starts showing them like not the full scope of their operations, but enough to like wet the whistle, right? So Bill ends up drafting up kind of the blueprint for what will be the OSS that we're going to talk about, which is the Office of Strategic Service. And he actually, fun fact, he actually got Commander Ian Fleming, who we all know as the writer of the James Bond stories, to help him draft those blueprints for his intelligence service.
Now, was he aware that the James Bond books are fiction?
I don't know when the James Bond books were written. Like, I don't know if that was after the war.
It was way later. It was. Yeah. I'm pretty sure. Like, in fact, I'm almost positive it was way later. I couldn't.
But you imagine that like Ian Fleming had already like started on those a little bit, and he was like, "Oh, do I have some ideas for your intelligence?"
Yeah. How about a watch that's also a laser?
So this makes me think that might have been the case, because we do get into some shit like that. So when he gets back from Great Britain, he he shows what all he's learned and the benefits of what an intelligence service like that could do for the country. And FDR signs into law that it's going to be called the COI, or the Coordinator of Intelligence. And it's a fairly large mandate. I mean, they're going to be the central people gathering any kind of intelligence, but it wasn't really much. It was like, okay, well, we'll gather some stuff about Germany, and like that's it. And we're not going to do anything with that intelligence, or at least you're not. We'll pass that along to the Army or to the Navy or whatever. And then after Pearl Harbor, he went and met with FDR again and was like, dude, you got to give us a little bit more of a mandate on this. Like, you got to be able to let us act on our intelligence, right? And that's when it was expanded from the COI to the OSS, or Office of Strategic Services. And that is where shit went bonkers. I mean, it went off the rails.
It was a hit.
And the OSS was a hit. No,
not the best.
Pretty sure the media were all like, wait, we have a Gestapo now?
I mean, I could see that. Basically, they tried to like compare it to things that were happening in other places that were viewed negatively. But I mean, we needed intelligence to be an effective force. And so in World War II, we didn't enter right away, but we learned stuff right. We learned about intelligence and intelligence gathering at a record pace, as a matter of fact. I think that,
well, it wasn't really until we entered, after Pearl Harbor, that we ramped up that COI to the OSS. So yeah, we had learned some things via Mr. Bill Donovan, and J. Edgar Hoover was around at this time, which, by the way, they hate each other.
J. Donovan and Hoover.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'll talk about that a little bit at the end because it's pretty funny. But because like I told you, Bill Donovan is like this macho man, charismatic, well liked, and he's moving up fast in the ranks, getting his own intelligence bureau. And then you got
naturally talented
weird little J. Edgar Hoover over here, like, he's trying to take my plans.
Goo, he wants to be president. Goo.
what the fuck?
So that's how I imagine J.
I'm not the normal person in this group, but okay. So, when does the OSS happen? Like, what year kind of, like, are we in the middle of World War II? Are we in it? Are we out of it? Like, where are we at?
Almost immediately after Pearl Harbor is when it went into effect. It was... I don't have an exact date, but it was in 1942.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Like, because there's a lot of operations that go into effect during World War II that actually fit more into like the OSS. Was it the? I think it's Alan Turing.
Like the one with that Benedict Cumberbatch movie.
Yes, I was trying
the Imitation Game.
Yeah, I was trying to avoid listing a movie. Like, I should know history, but instead I'm going to reference a movie.
That's where I learned most. What's worse about learning history from a movie than it is learning from a book? Right?
Fair enough. That's true. It can be dramatized, but I guess it's a little gray area.
Hollywood takes some liberties. They take some. They make them a lot more handsome than they should be. But
this motherfucker called Alan Turing ugly.
With
I don't know what Alan Turing looked like. Come on,
with Matt Damon's Leslie Groves.
Yeah, like a handsome Leslie Groves. God. Seriously, the Leslie, like Matt Damon, like there's not like a fat suit in the world that can make him not like a Abercrombie and Fitch model, All
right, let's get back on track because we're about to get into the fun stuff.
All right, sorry.
Nope, you're good. So whenever he got the full reign of the actual OSS, he went on a hiring spree. I mean, this guy was hiring everyone from like intellectuals to businessmen to criminals to actors to poets to scientists, everything.
Would you say he'd hire some baseball players too?
He did, or at least former baseball players. so, but what's funny is it was said about him that he lacked pretty much every skill to run a government agency besides just having the vision and drive to make it work.
Typical Gen Z are lying on his resume.
Oh my god!
Like even his biggest fans were like, it was like atrocious administrative skills. And he just didn't have the patience to like deal with managerial tasks.
It's
so
kind
he
of
just like outsourced that.
It's kind of like when you're friends with a guy who's a man, or a guy or a gal who's a manager. Like, I love them as an individual. Horrible manager.
I love this entire idea that everything we live on right now was built out of just people fucking winging it. Like they know the right people. Like I knew FDR from college. I've seen some shit in Europe. Here's a department, run that bitch, and that's the basis for our current intelligence. Like,
nepotism.
You're not gonna tell me all of a sudden that they were like, you know what, this guy really can't handle it. We're gonna fire him and hire people who are competent. No, this guy just fucked people up in battles, and was coincidentally knew the right people to get at a government agency. Like
I have an intelligence guy for that. I got a baseball player for that. I got an actor for that. Yeah.
So one apparent area of his managerial skills that lacked was his
soft
hiring.
skills. Oh, hiring. He had a very good HR team.
No. This is where he was questionable at best. It started out, I mean, whenever he first got this thing up and running, he started hiring like all his like rich buddies and their families in New York. You know, you had Vanderbilts and DuPonts and Morgans and Mellons in there.
Carnegies. Were the Carnegies in there?
The Carnegie Mellons?
The Carnegie Mellons. Nice melons, man.
Nice melons.
Melon.
And to the point where it was like, yeah, I mean, it's nice because, you know, they know how to speak French. That could come in handy.
Maybe.
Like, I don't think they're going to do really well if we like airdrop them in somewhere, right?
They're not going to want them to be airdropped in somewhere. Let's just be real.
But the other people he loved hiring were just like the people you would never expect, right? He started getting pro wrestlers, bartenders, probably like your friend at the speakeasies, right? Mm-hmm. He got anthropologists, he got orthodontists, he got felons on leave from federal penitentiaries, which I just imagine him like having his own suicide squad, and that's awesome.
Oh, like he went full Amanda Waller on it.
Yeah,
that would be hilarious.
I mean, that's only the tip of the iceberg, right? You had very famous celebrities that in some part worked with the OSS or worked in the OSS. John Wayne, Julia Child, John Steinbeck,
John Stamos.
No Stamos.
Damn it, Julia Child? Really?
Yep.
That's wild.
Most importantly, which I told you this was going to be a multi-part episode, one baseball player in particular, Mo Berg, who Z alluded to earlier, huge part of some of the OSS's operations domestically and across Europe in stopping the Nazi atomic bomb and working very closely to make sure that the Manhattan Project succeeded.
I thought we weren't going to talk about the Manhattan Project, Ryan. You said that at the beginning of the episode.
I'll bring it up.
Okay, I'm flaccid now. God.
Yeah, you've made Stephen flaccid. Are you happy now?
I'm gonna go get my Viagra.
So yeah, we're gonna do a whole episode on Mo Berg because his life and then his adventures during World War II are just enough to take up a whole episode. They're so fascinating. But anyway, this wild cast of members that work for the OSS is so crazy that other people would sometimes refer to the OSS as St. Elizabeth's, which is like the well-known DC lunatic asylum. And it was on note that Donovan once said, hell, I'd put Stalin on the OSS payroll if I thought it would help defeat Hitler. And no one knew if he was serious or not.
In my headcanon, he was serious about it.
It sounds like he was. He doesn't sound like a guy that like told jokes like that. He's like,
I got a Stalin guy.
I just want to defeat Hitler. Fuck that Nazi.
One of my favorite of his hires was his chief scientist Stanley Lovell, and I'm kind of quoting from the book here. A lot of this information I'm getting for this episode is from Sam Keen's Bastard Brigade that I've got right here, and it is a fantastic book. I mean, it's written so well, and it's downright hilarious, if not for like the looming atomic bomb at the background.
Look at that book. John Wick could kill 7 people with that motherfucker.
Ryan can understand about 9 words in that book.
It has pictures.
It's got pictures, so he likes it. Show him the pop-up feature. Show him the pop-up feature, Ryan.
It's just a bomb. It's just like
just a mushroom clap.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Oh,
what a terrible way to end.
So when Donovan first interviewed Stanley Lovell, he told him he wanted him to be the OSS equivalent of Professor Moriarty, which, as you know, is like Sherlock Holmes' like arch nemesis.
That's a heavy resume to fall into.
But like Sam Keen says in the book, it's more accurate to think of Lovell as Q from the James Bond franchise. He's like that nerdy kid, just like going around the lab, just like the spy comes down there and he's like, "Look what we've got for you today, Mr. Bond," and he's got like all these little gadgets.
I mean, this is the most like forward-thinking group of people in the end. Like, this is the war facilitates innovation. So
in this innovative spirit, they came up with some pretty crazy inventions.
All right, let's hear them, Ryan.
Let's get it.
I'll go through some of the quick and easy ones first. They had bombs that looked like mollusks that they would attach to the bottoms of ships.
That was the precursor to the putting your key in a thing that looks like a rock. He's got it. Sweet.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
They crafted shoes and buttons and batteries with secret cavities to conceal documents. Pretty tame.
Yeah.
They invented pencils and cigarettes that shot bullets.
Sweet.
Pretty cool.
That's Ian Fleming shit right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Get the English on the phone. We need some ideas.
One of my favorites was an explosive powder they created that they called Aunt Jemima, because it had the consistency of flour and it could be mixed with water and even baked into biscuits and nibbled on without any danger. And only when ignited with a fuse did Aunt Jemima detonate.
Are you kidding me?
There's a sugar-free version too.
That's pretty cool.
That's badass. Like a muffin could kill you with a fuse. That's amazing. Like, so somebody could eat that shit, but then you can stick a fuse in it and be like, motherfuckers are dead.
You just get to the pearly gates. What got you? Cinnamon roll.
So that's when their ideas were pretty tame and like somewhat grounded in reality.
That's
and then
tame.
they started like thinking outside the box a little bit. And so
it was a box that autonomously thought outside the box.
So the OSS heard that Hitler and Mussolini were going to be holding a summit at the Brenner Pass between Austria and Italy. And they devised a little method to dump a vial of liquid into a vase of flowers in the middle of the conference room. And the plan was within 20 minutes, that liquid would evaporate and turn into a mustard gas and fry the corneas of everyone in the room. And
whoa, that's metal.
The metal part of it is they tried to set up a meeting with the Pope beforehand and have him prophesize that God would strike the fascist blind for violating the 10 Commandments.
Yo.
So that way it would seem like God did it.
Yo.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That does sound like some wild shit.
That's rude.
You know, this makes a lot more sense for some of the shit they try to pull for Fidel Castro.
Yep. But I guess the Nazis caught on to this little gambit, and they moved the summit location at the last minute. So that plan never got to happen.
Darn.
So Wild Bill Donovan, the one thing I can see lots of positive things about him, even though he was like batshit. But one positive thing about him, even from his time, working in the district attorney's office to working in the Department of Justice to running the OSS, he was very like progressive as far as like diversity and equality and things like that. He had a very strong stance on like women in the workplace. At a time, I want to say like of the 13,000 personnel in the OSS, 4,000 of the officers were women, which was pretty crazy back then.
That is pretty crazy for back then. Absolutely. Yep. But it sounds like he was a guy that was all about results, and he didn't give a shit how he got his results.
He also just fucking loved going against the grain. Like, I don't even know if he really liked women that much, or if he was just like, oh, you're telling me not to hire women, I'll hire 10 of them. You know what I mean?
Maybe he just had a severe case of ODD.
He's a gigantic contrarian. Like, make sure they only stay on the desk in the front. Like, fuck that. They're gonna be running the shit in the back.
All right. So my main reason for bringing up the women spies was they were incredibly effective, and this was new, right? One of these women, most famously, her name is Barbara Lauers. She was born in Czechoslovakia. She was incredibly intelligent. She had a law degree. She was a journalist. She was fluent in English, French, Czech, German, Slavic.
What was her name?
Barbara Lauers.
Okay.
She went on to join the OSS in Rome and kicked off what was called Operation Sauerkraut. And it's basically where her and other spies would go to Allied POW camps. They would interview these German and Czech prisoners of war, and then they would basically like train them to go back and dispatch propaganda all over Europe. Mm-hmm. And it was incredibly effective. But my favorite thing she did, super cool, was she created what was called the fictional organization of the League of Lonely Women. And this fake organization was created to demoralize German troops by making them believe that German wives and girlfriends that they left behind were out having casual affairs with foreign men while they were out fighting.
That is savage.
They fucking NTR'd fucking German troops. Are you serious?
Oh my god.
So they printed up all these leaflets, like 200,000 leaflets about this, and they were spread all throughout Rome. And it was so successful, they said, that even the Washington Post was fooled and like ran a whole story about it. But the leaflet was a supposed plea from the women of Germany, and it read, "We, of course, are selfish too. We have been separated from our men for many years. With all those foreigners around us, we would like once more to press a real German youth to our bosom. No inhibitions now. Your wife, sister, or lover is one of us as well. We think of you and Germany's future."
She just Dear John'd the entire German
nation. Like, what the fuck? NTR'd the whole group.
We're going a different direction. It's not working out. It's not you, it's me.
Entire German army just quits. Like, no.
Oh, God.
I gotta get home. Lucy.
Lucy. That is so
that was one of the,
dastardly wonderful.
So that was one of the very successful missions carried out by the OSS. One less successful mission, but equally hilarious. I kind of gave you guys a spoiler into this one, but there was a whole plan to basically make Hitler into a woman. So Dr. Stanley Lovell, who we talked about earlier, he developed what he called the glandular approach to winning the war.
Is this guy just like a mad scientist with like the steampunk goggles and everything, and just like
he believed that he said that he believed that Hitler kind of straddled that male-female gender line and therefore might be easily pushed toward one sex or the other.
Are you serious?
So he took a bunch of estrogen and like other hormones and injected them, or the plan was to inject them into some beets and carrots in Hitler's personal garden. And with the hopes that Hitler's breasts would swell, his mustache would fall out, and then his voice would rise to a humiliating new decibel. Right? And then
this is literally a segment in The Longest Yard.
and the whole plan was that if they can make that happen to him, his troops would lose all morale into him and think they had been fooled and that they were being led by a woman this whole time.
Oh wow!
So they got as far as like making all the syringes, bribing one of Hitler's gardeners, and delivering them to Hitler's gardener. But since it's never happened, they only can assume that the gardener just took the money and tossed the syringes.
Oh man!
But still, great plan nonetheless.
Can you imagine if history went that angle? Like, and then instead of like Hitler committing suicide in a bunker, the alternate reality is he's like, and then Hitler grew breasts, and the war was won.
History would look a lot different.
It would be a lot different.
Well, here I am.
Here we are,
knowing this knowledge now. So
good at warfare.
So is this really where it ends, or does the OSS continue past that? Like
OSS continues past that. I do want to tell you about one more really interesting operation, if you guys have the time, that I think you would be especially interested in, Stephen. This one was called Operation Fantasia. And this was the brainchild of the OSS psychological warfare strategist, Ed Salinger. He was not a scientist. He was a businessman. He ran an import-export business in Tokyo before the war. Now, much of what we talked about tonight is about all of our attempts to like stop the Nazis. But Ed was in charge of like, okay, we got to do something about the Japanese because they're hitting us from the other side, right? Mm-hmm. And so since he ran that import-export business in Japanese culture, he was the foremost, most knowledgeable person on Japanese culture. And so he used what little he knew about the culture and decided that the Japanese are crazy afraid of kitsune, which are fox-shaped spirits with magical abilities.
Look, so, I know. Kitsune are fucking terrifying.
Oh man.
He wrote a whole memo kind of outlining what his idea was, and the whole thing rested upon the fact that the modern Japanese is subject to superstition. This is quoted. Superstitions, beliefs in evil spirits, and unnatural manifestations which can be provoked and stimulated was what he wrote in his memo. So,
stimulated, if you know what I mean.
So, it is funny. There's a gentleman, historian named Vince Houghton, who is a curator of the International Spy Museum, and he this is much later. He wrote, looking back at that this really like demonstrated the breadth of racism, ethnocentrism, and general disregard for Japanese culture held by many, if not most, of the top American military, intelligence, and political leadership during World War II. So while he thought he knew everything about Japanese culture, and no one else really around him did, they just relied on him to, right?
He watched one episode of Dragon Ball, and then he was good.
they ran with this idea. They're like, yeah, we'll make fake kitsune, we'll make fake cat spirits. I guess.
Are you fucking serious?
Yeah.
So they started coming up. They started just like workshopping ideas, right? And the first idea was that the OSS would fashion fox-shaped balloons to fly over Japanese villages and scare the citizens below. And they also approached a whistle making company.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a wizard. They approached a wizard to summon these. His name was Mickey Mouse, Operation Fantasia.
They asked this whistle company to create an instrument that simulated fox sounds. And there was a whole memo that came out about this in the planning committee. And it said these whistles can be used in combat, and a sufficient number of these should be create an eerie sound of the kind calculated to meet the Japanese superstition. What? and then they approached another company to create artificial fox odors, and they thought that the Japanese citizens would somehow recognize this scent, just as he thought they would recognize a rare fox sound.
World War II was just the most like throw spaghetti against the wall bullshit.
That's like that's like
a whole village of Japanese would be like, smells like fox.
This is the scheme like a 12-year-old and as a 10-year-old like younger brother would come up with to trick the bullies. This is like Home Alone almost. I feel like
this is so ridiculous. But the worst part is I know World War II is full of shit like this.
Dude, so much. Like, I'm just scratching the surface.
So many like schemes that basically, if you had an idea, they would throw it against a wall because it was like, well, we're going to be in war for the next 10 years, so we might as well try anything. And
have we thought of ninjas?
You'll be glad to
pirates?
know. Yeah, you'll be glad to know that once they sat down and looked at this proposal for these balloons and whistles and odors, they were like, okay,
approved.
That doesn't make much sense. I don't think this would work. Denied. And then they decided to go with the better plan, which was to catch live foxes in China and Australia, spray paint them with glow paint, and release them throughout Japan.
No, stop. You can't be serious. That was the plan we decided on otherwise.
So if anybody...
Go ahead.
No. Like, if anybody is wondering why we had a late start to the Manhattan Project, it's because we were trying other ways.
I'm having a mental breakdown right now over the actions of our nation. Every time I listen to somebody being like, America, like we're the best bullshit, I remember history is full of stories where we are absolutely not the best. We're making up things. We're making spaghetti. And we're fucking it up the whole time. God damn it.
Oh my God.
Needless to say, there was a lot of logistical issues that need to be taken care of in order to catch wild foxes, paint them where they're glowing, and then releasing them. So
can you imagine the job description? Like someone's like, we got a job for you. All right, awesome. I'm up for anything. Like, we need you to catch wild foxes.
Yeah, but then he'd be, and then the guy gets hired and everything, and then he's in his cups at the local bar, like, "Hey, how was work for you, Jerry?" Then he'd be like, "Oh God,
he's got
spray paint
over his face,
covered in neon glowing paint."
I had to spray paint 7 foxes today. They did not appreciate it. I'm telling you, foxes don't like spray paint,
and that's why they unionized.
And speaking of the spray paint, that was the first hurdle, right? They were like, "Where the hell were we going to get paint that glows to put on them?" And the only thing they had was a paint. There was a glow in the dark paint at the time. They were putting it on everything at the time. They were putting on watches. They were putting it, but it was all made out of radium.
Yeah, I was about to say radium, right? Yeah. So now we sent in radioactive foxes first.
Exactly. So they were like,
that sounds like a band name.
They were like, well, who can we trust to paint these foxes?
Look,
Australians?
Look, I'm going to tell you this right now. We've talked about Wild Bill, Silly Willy, whatever you want to call him, this entire episode. And all it has done is highlight to me how much absolute garbage the United States is willing to fund in the face of war. And so here's the thing. They're like, oh, we developed so many new technologies during the war and things like that. But they really kind of downplayed do you remember when we captured wild foxes and spray painted them and shit like that? Do you remember that? No. They want to talk about the planes. They want to talk about the technology. No one wants to talk about the weird ass bullshit that Wild Bill and everybody else involved in the government basically just made up to try to win.
Like I just can picture like a weapons presentation, with like a Tony Stark typing up. He's like, I say, why not do both, ladies and gentlemen? I give you the glowy fox, and just a bunch of foxes get released from a crate.
I officially quit. What the fuck?
So they were like, we got to get somebody to paint these foxes. And they're like, does anybody know anybody who has the knowledge and know how to paint foxes? And this one guy was like, oh yeah, I know this guy. He's the vet over at the Central Park Zoo. His name's Harry, and Harry Nymphus.
Wait, and you know the name?
Yeah, his name's Harry Nymphus.
Yeah, Harry Nymphus, fox spray painter.
And
ever heard of him?
And he didn't have access. And it should go without saying, he'd never done anything like this before. So he just found a raccoon. And just in exchange for just feeding it tons of food, that raccoon let him paint radium on it, all he wanted.
I'm not. That can't be real. Like history is not this fucked up. Really?
Yes, it is. Oh yeah, this is.
And so okay. So now we figured out how to paint them, but will they actually scare anyone? Is the question. So we got to test that out, but it costs a lot of money to go test it on like some village in Japan. So what if we just paint like 30 foxes and we just release them in a park in DC?
No.
Just to see how the public reacts.
No.
So what happened?
No.
So these radium foxes were released.
So
and
I'll set the scene for you. It was a temperate, little warm summer night, 1945. Couples out in the park kissing, and they just see ghostly creatures running past them, glowing blue, and they freaked. I mean, people were calling 911, like the hotlines were going off. Yeah. And so the National Park Police reported on the incident and said that these were horrified citizens, shocked by the sudden sight of the leaping ghost-like animals. They fled from the dark recesses of the park with the screaming Gemies. Is their words.
Screaming Gemies. I like their first album. Their next album was a little late.
So okay, we can paint them, we can catch them, and we know they scare people. But how are we going to get them there? And so the question came up: you think foxes can swim?
You kidding me?
Are you fucking kidding?
So how many foxes did we release onto Japanese shores that didn't make it? And then wouldn't that wash off the whatever?
Don't think about it too hard. I'm already surprised that we just decided that swimming was the best option.
So, under the cloak of an early morning fog, the OSS team they took a group of captured foxes onto a boat destined for the middle of the Chesapeake Bay. Remember, we're still testing this, and
we're still in beta. Yep.
And just one by one, they just started tossing foxes off the boat into the cold,
stop.
into the
Wrap
cold
this
water.
bitch up. You can't be real. That's unbelievable. We're just tossing animals into the ocean.
To be fair, they all survived.
Oh, they did? Good.
Good for them. Like, clearly.
It had been a total success, except by the time they reached the shore, as you mentioned, Z, all the paint was gone. So
this is the beginnings of the Central Intelligence Agency, right?
100% is, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Like, was it like an 8-year program to get them all educated, or
it's the same people? They just.
So, that's funny.
I'll keep the rest of it short.
My brain has officially quit.
They went through other ideas, like taking taxidermied foxes and spray painting those, and then like attaching them to a balloon and like sending them over the skies. Because if they're scared of kitsune, surely they'd be scared of floating kitsune.
This cannot be fucking real. Like, I just feel like I'm being punked. I'm being trolled the entire fucking time. Like, what?
Imagine if they found out that Kappa existed and like, ooh, they're scared of the Kappa, then they try and replicate.
What if you just get like a short, balding guy and you just put him in a costume the entire time? He's like, just runs after people.
So Stanley Lovell, the guy we talked about, who's like claim to fame is like he wanted to put estrogen in Hitler's food to win the war. Even this was too absurd for him, and he was like, yeah. No, we're not funding this. Shut that shit down. and so they killed it, and that was the end of that. But that, I mean, you're right. Just the amount of money that we would put in to these harebrained ideas are ridiculous to me.
This has been great.
So that leads me to say, like, these are just scratching the surface. There is 500 other crazy, wacky, unbelievable stories about the things that the OSS did. But the craziest thing of all, most of them worked. Like, most of the schemes that they ended up actually doing worked. Bill Donovan, like, he wasn't afraid to say, yeah, fuck it, let's give it a shot. And then having the drive to back it up to make sure it succeeded. One film director, John Ford, who was another OSS recruit. He said, Bill Donovan, he thought nothing of parachuting into France, blowing up a bridge, pissing in Luftwaffe gas tanks, then dancing on the roof of the St. Regis Hotel with a German spy. And it is, I mean, it's, you need somebody like that leading you sometimes, right? Especially in war. Like, this man was like unbelievable. I mean, he was stranger than fiction and inspired morale. And I mean, and it gave us a victory overall. I mean, if not for the OSS, America could not have been as successful. We definitely wouldn't have completed the Manhattan Project.
Agreed.
Like, just genuinely, the leaps and bounds America made during World War II are what poised it to be a global superpower. We outpaced. I'm gonna be honest with you. I've researched World War II in a big way, and Germany did some fucking wild and crazy shit too. And it just turns out, if you have two drunk people fighting each other, they're going to come up with a lot of solutions. And that's basically how I view America and Germany in the long run.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So all that to say, man is definitely a hero, if not a checkered one. But he still has a statue in the lobby of Langley at the CIA headquarters to this day. As you said, the OSS did kind of collapse after World War II. He had this whole plan to even make it broader than it already was, and some press got a hold of it, and everybody was like, "Oh, you want a secret police?" And he was quickly like, that was taken down, right? And then the CIA was shortly established afterwards, which he was not made the head of. But he's still a key moment in our history, and no good story is complete without these absolutely batshit stories within them, right?
Yeah, like 100% agreed. Great job, by the way, Ryan. I was actually looking forward to getting into the World War II stuff again. I don't think we've done one since Mad Jack Churchill. So
the Kitsune story just has me.
That broke you, Stephen. Yeah, you're broken now.
That's why I saved it to the end. I was like, God, I'm to get to it.
I can't anymore. I'm good. Wrap this bitch up because I got nothing to say.
Stephen's done. We broke Stephen.
Well, hey, I hope you guys enjoyed the stories we brought to you tonight. All of them mostly true. I tried not to heavily dramatize anything. Kitsune one, 100% accurate. It was all accurate. But that one, I want to make sure you know we did that shit.
If you know, you know.
That being said, I do plan to do a couple more episodes based around World War II and kind of our kerfuffles and some of the strange characters we meet in that story. We probably will have a couple episodes in between those episodes in Chaotic Pubcast, in Chaotic Underground. So make sure you check those out as well. We will see you next time. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Really helps us out. We'll see you next time.
Absolutely.
Peace, guys.
Thank you. Bye.